All right, let's bring in Nader Hashemi, who's an associate professor over at the University of Denver. Nader, good to have you on the show. Coming into this, I think Saudi Arabia was hoping for two things. First, the summit being a showcase for, let's say, the evolution of the kingdom, and two, a chance to rehabilitate the image of the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Do you think that Saudi Arabia has been able to achieve this?
Only very partially. I think the G20 summit has been a huge setback for the ambitions that Saudi Arabia had when last December it was announced that the G20 was going to meet in Riyadh. The big hope, as your question indicated, was that world leaders would arrive in Riyadh and effectively validate the rule of the Saudi Crown Prince, welcome Saudi Arabia into the community of nations, and forget Saudi Arabia's horrific and disastrous human rights record, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and its catastrophic role in promoting authoritarianism throughout the Middle East. So that was the big hope. I think from a Saudi perspective, they're going to interpret what happened this weekend as a partial victory, in the sense that despite the demands from global civil society and human rights groups, no one boycotted the summit. They all showed up, and there was no discussion of human rights. The name Jamal Khashoggi or the name of women human rights activists were not discussed. So I think from that perspective, it's only at best a partial victory for Saudi Arabia.
I think it's a good point you make in terms of none of the countries, or 19 countries, have actually boycotted this. All right, I've covered a couple of these G20 summits. Generally, the final communiques are overly ambitious, but I don't think the world has faced as big of a challenge as it is right now since the global financial crisis of 2018. Do you think this group will be able to step up to the plate and deliver?
Well, it's a very tall order because, we are facing a crisis that we've never seen before, and it's going to take global cooperation to try and solve these problems. And that in and of itself is the problem. There are deep divisions between members of the G20, particularly the United States under Donald Trump, and China. There are deep divisions, between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. So that doesn't bode well for global cooperation. I think we're sort of in a moment of pause here. People are waiting to see what Joe Biden plans to do about this issue. As you know, here in the United States, the focus of public attention is on Donald Trump's refusal to accept the election results and to leave office peacefully. And so I think a lot of the potential for the G20 to come together and solve some of these global problems, particularly the economic ones related to the pandemic, are going to require leadership from the strongest countries in the international system, and one of them being the United States. And up until now, there hasn't been a lot of discussion from Joe Biden about what his plan is, because he's really focused on domestic politics here in the United States.
Okay, you mentioned economic problems. Out of the 19 countries in the group, only China is expected to slate a positive rate of GDP growth for 2020. I mean, how strong of a position are these sort of, quote, richest countries to help the poorer countries? Because it's one of, the objectives of the G20.
Right. They're not in a very good position. One of the things that's being discussed, obviously, is the question of a vaccine, and whether there is a moral responsibility from the countries in the West, primarily the United States and in Europe, that they have a responsibility to at least help the global South with free distribution and access to the vaccine. Without that, the crisis will continue in those countries. So I think that's going to be the immediate concern. With respect to the economic, problems, you're right. The focus very much is in the West on their own internal problems, political and economic. And so that raises, a lot of questions to what extent they can help the developing world. There's not a big appetite, at least here in the United States, for, the United States to divert resources from a country that is deeply broken here in the West, in the United States, and help poorer countries. It would take a lot of, a vision and a plan of action to really mobilize public opinion. So I don't see that coming. Right now, the focus is on trying to stop the massive deaths that are flowing from the pandemic, and we'll have to wait and see whether there's a concrete plan to distribute this vaccine to countries in the developing world.
That number, more than 56 million infected and nearly 1.4 million people having died as a result of COVID-19. All right, Nader Hashemi, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.